Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Luke, as everyone calls me. Welcome back to my channel. You may have noticed that we have a fourth or a third guest, including myself. Heidi Love from Unfiltered Rise podcast is here today. I did a session with her about a week and a half ago where we talked about many of the topics that we talk about here on this channel. And I thought she would be a natural fit to explore these ideas further. And of course, we also have Ostic and producer Jordan, but welcome all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, 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 yes. So today we're going to be talking about chapter 17 from the Abridged Golden Bough, which is entitled The Burden of Royalty. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And uh, something similar could possibly be said for the amount of inspiration that I've had lately. A lot of late nights, a lot of digressions and rabbit trails. Hopefully, I can get through all 35 slides that I prepared for today. It's likely not going to happen. We're going to fuse a couple of these together. But I just want to talk about this title card real quick. Of course, I've got the Emperor, the Makito of Japan, which is primarily going to correspond to the chapter from Frazer. A lot of what Frazer has to say in these two sections from chapter 17 today, I felt could be indexed and enumerated in several charts that I've provided. I think conceptually, essentially what we're going to go through is just all the different taboos that are required of these divine kings, these divine emperors, and how burdensome their life really is, trying to really uphold the fabric of the universe and how undesirable the position is as a result of their duties across cultures that range from Japan to Africa. So we're going to be talking about that towards the middle of this presentation. And then there's a lot of stuff to catch up on. I have some corrections. I made some errors during last presentation, some half truths that I'd like to rectify for my scholarly integrity. But and we'll get to those. And I also want to talk about some of the synchronicities because they keep coming. But going from this Sergeant Pepper's-esque graphic that I put together here on the front, we're going to continue to look at the correlations between the space program and pandemics. And in that vein, we're also going to be looking at the continued relationship between the Apollo missions and Disney. As well as we're going to look at another layer of how the Great Mother archetype is connected to the conception of outer space and our desire to explore it. Um, something else that I did in preparation for this was to look at perhaps what is called the coda of the Apollo missions. I never really dug into it before, but the Apollo Soyuz missions, which came a few years after the end of the Apollo moon missions. And that led to a deeper understanding of this Jack and the Beanstalk narrative that seems to be emergent from our examination of the Apollo missions. And we got a little bit more of the mythological symbolism that is embedded in the Apollo missions themselves. As you can tell here in the bottom right hand corner, Jupiter looms even larger than I initially expected. And tying it all together, what was really helpful, and I think I recommend to really anyone, is is just continued familiarity with Ovid's The Metamorphosis. So before we get into the first slide, I just want to open the floor up and see what my guests have to say about what they had to read this week and if it inspired any digressions of their own. Who
Uh,
goes
I'll
first?
I'll start to. Okay, a lot of things. I think this was my favorite discussion. This chapter, I really liked the way it flowed, and I could draw a lot of parallels from like reality and like movies. The things that jumped out to me about all these rituals and the kings being like burdened with all these rituals and their whole life getting centered around doing these like people say quote unquote make believe things. They all engage in that. And I think if you'll study the second part of the chapter, there's a section called that there are two kings. One is a spiritual king and one is the king that is actually operating. So I could think of a lot of people that are placed in like you know they are not actually in power, but they're placed in a certain power. Like in the case of India, you'll see the president. The president is simply a placeholder. He does not actually have any power. he or she, he just exists. The real power lies with the parliament and the prime minister. So I really like that. And then I thought about it in terms of fame, what fame does to people. If you must be familiar with John Lennon and how he talked about how fame affected his life. He could not move anywhere. He they What they discussed was that they would be stuck in their rooms. Their whole life would be car, hotel, and
Yes.
then planes, and then back to their studio. They could not go anywhere. So John Lennon, they visited America, but they did not even roam out of their rooms. So that was interesting to me, that how their fame actually imprisons them. And a lot of shows are made, like The Crown was made, discussing the life of Queen Elizabeth II, and then Princess Diana. A lot of movies about women, basically. I think women are more susceptible to this idea of being put on a pedestal and then having to uphold all these rituals and image conscious things, kind of things. I think women are more susceptible to these things. These were the thoughts that were going in my throughout my mind. And I thought about how violently a culture could react to people breaking certain taboos. Then I thought about the movie The Verdict. Have you seen The Verdict, starring Paul Newman? Are you familiar with
Which Paul Newman movie?
The
What's it called?
Verdict? The Verdict by Sidney
The
Lumet.
Verdict. I
He
don't
plays a
know. I don't
lawyer.
know it. Does anybody else?
Okay. So basically what happens in the film is that he breaks the client, and there's a confidentiality agreement between the client and the lawyer, that he's always supposed to consult the client before going ahead with the decision. But he actually breaks that rule because of a moral problem that he sees, because the client wanted to settle, and he decided, it's not you should not settle, you should fight these people. There was a judge who actually caused death, something like that. But like, doing this very rational thing, very human thing, it actually ostracized him from the group of from the the bar of lawyers. They actually ostracized him. Even the client attacked him, like, you are supposed to tell me what's going on. I thought, like, it's just so rational and the right thing to do. And he has he so many obstacles are presented to him, for breaking this superfluous rule. And then I thought about that. Yeah, these are the things that I was thinking about. Like, people can get so fanatic about the religion. It becomes a religion of sort, because the yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Excellent. What about the ladies? Did you have any responses to the material today?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
you
for
go,
it. Go for
Heidi.
it.
Okay. So immediately, because I'm a weirdo, King Kill 33 all day long. I was like, what? Like that's all up in my wheelhouse at that point. And then also, the Golden Fleece, the Golden Fleece, the Golden
Yes.
Vow, the Golden Fleece. I was like, Jackie knew what was up. And I've done a breakdown on that where I kind of lay that out. And I think it was for a pretty good reason. But Society of Cincinnati was Jack Bouvier. So, like always, conspiratorial mind when I'm going through this stuff. The second one for me was, Howard Hughes, man. Stop cutting his fingernails, stop cutting his hair, wouldn't touch the floor,
Yeah, that's
wore
right.
Kleenex boxes on his feet. Yeah, it gets weird.
The,
His
the
people,
spruce moose.
right. And his people were not taking care of him because they were supposed to steal it, right? But they didn't do it. So I don't want to elaborate because we'll probably get into that. But I saw a lot of similarities there because I've done so much research on him. Another one that I definitely feel was sacrificed, the killing of the king. So that, and then of course I went down like 30 rabbit holes because my brain is weird, but yeah.
Sure. Well, I have some quotes from Carl Jung that I'd like to introduce that are relevant to all these conversations. But Jordan, would you? I know Jordan's always moving me along. Do you want to say something before we begin?
Just as always, lots of personal synchronicities over the past week leading up to. I love doing these because life just kind of coalesces around whatever subject matter we're focused on. Love King Kill 33. That was my birthday present this summer. Thank you, Luke.
Yes, she's like me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I personally, I'm from Dallas. My grandfather was a 32 degree Scottish Rite, and on the PD that day, his friends came to my school every year and traumatized us about the big event. Unfortunately, I was not with it enough while he was still alive to really get into it with him. Not that I don't know what he knows, and I don't know what he would say. Um, but yeah, so that's personally like very
Cool.
relevant to me, and just the energetics of that space is so fascinating. Going there, like feeling it is something that I'm very personally interested in, is like kind of tapping into things that way. But for this presentation in general, we're entering eclipse season, they say, and that just had me thinking about the moon even more deeply than normal. There was an episode of Crow a long time ago that it's been a while since I listened to this one, but they're talking about the eclipses and talking about they mention these Mesopotamian myths where the king, it was thought to be very ominous to be a king during an eclipse,
Mm.
and they would put in a substitute king to spare
Mm.
the quote real king from whatever horrors would befall him. So that feels super relevant to this specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that's an interesting angle when we contemplate things like doppelgangers and body doubles and things like that. All right. So let's progress to the next slide. Slide 270. It's just I take in so much Carl Jung with the audiobooks every week, and I try to relate these passages that are relevant to sections that we've done before. Jordan, would you read this first one for us? It's from the Red Book.
Yeah, you got it. These primordial images are not something one finds, but something that finds one. They are the ancient powers that dwell in the soul. They are not inventions of the mind, but living forces, eternal and autonomous. They are magic in the highest sense, for they move the world, they shape destiny, and they can both create and destroy. The soul is not free until it has surrendered to them, until it has allowed these powers to speak through its visions and dreams.
Right. So the reason why I thought that one was so interesting, I mean, throughout our conversations on this channel, specifically in regards to the Golden Bough and my ongoing research, um, we've toyed around with trying to understand what the concepts of possession are specific. And on Heidi's show, we looked at Donald Trump potentially being possessed by an archetype of Jupiter. Um, what that means, and we've also talked about magic and how like the archetypes could be potentially hacked into. I believe last week we looked at some passages talking about the individuals that speak with primordial images speak with 1,000 voices. And it was just so interesting to me on the heels of that conversation to encounter a passage like this, um, and to have Young just come out and say, like, this is magic. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And even like I have this Pepe magician tarot card, it raises very interesting questions about what we're doing with memology, what's going on with memes, like what we're actually engaging in.
Especially
And this
with
probably
Young.
leads to
Yeah, especially with he has a
yeah, for
whole
sure.
quote about the frogs being, do you know
Yes, he
this?
does
Yeah,
talk about
yeah,
frogs a
yeah.
lot in the Red Book. I've been
Hmm.
wondering about how to connect that to everything, but you have provided the bridge. Do you want to elaborate on it for
Yeah,
other people
I'll
or
find it really quick here because it's not very long, but it's pretty it fits in really integral, I think, with the whole Pepe thing. So yeah, young do some stuff, I think.
yeah. Yeah.
Definitely, right? He's
Well, we can
talking.
circle back we
uh,
can circle back if it takes a second
oh,
to look
I
up,
found
but
it. He just said toads
oh,
and
okay,
frogs
cool.
are God's first attempt to make man. And he also talks about how they are ruled basically on the dark side. So
Mm,
and that would align with chaos magic. It doesn't always have to be like Luciferian or satanic, right? Just chaos, which Trump gives us a good dose of
right.
always. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I have not read Anton Wilson very much, but I think that would, from what I understand, that would be pretty essential to this conversation. Asik, do you want to weigh on this slide, or should we progress to the next one? I imagine you have something to say.
No, not really. I think what I think about all these things is that um, you know there's a layer of consciousness that people believe in, and the more people believe in it, the more stronger it gets, and then it actually emerges into into reality. I mean, this is what I feel about all these things. Like, people are inserting these ideas into the this invisible layer, and then if more people keep paying attention to them, they start to develop in actual material sense, and then they start to you know come up. Like, people talk about like future is you are being attacked by the future, something like that. People talk about it, so it's like that. I thought,
You know, I think someone that would be relevant to what you're saying, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read him, but is Teilhard de Chardin with the concept of the news sphere. Has anyone else dug into him? I read him years ago. I read like Phenomenon of Man and I think The Future of Man or something like that. And at the time, I remember thinking this is the best writer that I have ever vehemently disagreed with. I think my attitude would somewhat change now given what I'm interested in. But Osik, I don't know if you've encountered him before. I think he's someone that's going to get woven into this discussion at some point over the next year. So, yeah, I'm ready to go to the next slide if you guys are.
Sure. Also, I do really love this paradox of you have to surrender to become free. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, this raises very interesting questions about destiny and free will in Jung. I think he thinks like we can fight against these archetypes, but ultimately we have to integrate them. I think that's what he's going with. But it's almost like these things are assigned to us from eternity. And it raises a very interesting question about, can you ever get outside of them? Which has been a conversation we've been talking about. Can you ever extricate yourself from myth? Can you ever disavow the archetype that seems to follow you around? Could Trump ever like stop doing the Jupiterian stuff that we've identified? Like, I don't know. It just maybe he just learned to accept it at some point.
Well, biblically, they say, these are familiar spirits, and people have a really easy time with acceptance of a guardian angel or a guardian spirit, but a really hard time with the opposite of that. And there, to each, thing is equilibrium. So people have to understand that is real. So there's bad and good. They're both there.
Osik, I think you had a comment.
I like to say that even maybe if you're a writer or engaged in an artistic pursuit, you cannot help but actually embody these archetypes yourself at some point. Because when you're not making an art, you're just sitting right there and you think, I'm just a normal person. But as soon as you get into that zone, you transform into someone else. Because I felt it in myself. I'm sure musicians, I'm sure they feel it because they're always in the zone. That's why they
Yeah.
keep all taking all these drugs to keep themselves in that zone. Like, I had to maintain that high because they are accessing those archetypes, and they are creating a relationship with the world, which, like, which makes them. I think Dave Chappelle talked about, having the strongest dream in the room. you know if you've heard his stand-up, Dave Chappelle talked about,
Oh yeah,
your
we know
dream
Dave
should be
Chappelle. Yeah.
you should have the strongest dream, and the person with the strongest dream in the room wins. And suddenly you'll see you're a part of someone else's dream if your dream is not strong enough. That's what I felt,
It's a
thinking
pretty
about
poetic way
these
of putting it.
archetypes.
Yeah, and I think given a shared fascination, I think at least for 3 out of 4 of us, probably all 4, I imagine Heidi's interested as well. But I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I even laid this out very early on before I knew like the research was going this way. It's just how much magic surrounds Kubrick, right? In a lot of different ways. And, I think it raises a very interesting question. And I think we kind of take it for granted that he is a magician, right? He's doing movie magic. But what that really means, like what that really means to embody the magician archetype, if he saw himself as possessed by this magician archetype, I think it's something that I probably, or all of us collaboratively, should drill down on what that really means, because it's everywhere. I earlier on in the series, I pointed out like the magic show in Barry Lyndon, the reference to a magic show in Full Metal Jacket. Actually, those two magic shows are connected, in my opinion. It's a whole thing. And there are many other examples. Those are just two off the top of my head. So I think I might need to go a little deeper into that. But we have a lot to do. So let's go to the next slide. So yeah, where are we at? I forget this. Oh, okay. So Young died. I believe Young died on June 6, 1961. And what's interesting about that is that I think Kennedy did his like we're going to go to the moon speech before Congress on I think it's May 23rd, 1961. So I oftentimes like really fantasize about what Carl Jung would have said about outer space because I'm like searching for it because he kind of lived after he was his I think a lot of his imagination was soaking in like the horrors of World War II and the Cold War with the Trinity tests in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I don't know how much of his imagination was really in live to the concept of going to the moon or traveling to other planets, even though he had that outer space experience when he had his heart attack in 1944, which we've talked about. But I did some digging, and in volume 2 of his letters, he does talk about Sputnik. And it was pretty revealing to get these volume 2 of his letters. It's I don't own it. They're like it's like $150 to get a copy of this, and maybe I'll dig into it. But we have some meditations on Sputnik, which are really fascinating. And of course, this led to other rabbit trails. Heidi, would you read these for us?
Oh, sure. All right. The Russian Sputnik is a portent of a new era in which, sorry, it's really small for me, in which the stars are no longer distant symbols, but objects of human conquest. Yet, what we reach for in the sky is often the projection of our own consciousness. The satellite is not just metal and science, it is a symbol of our time's collective soul, anxious and aspirational. C.G. Jung, Letter to Herbert Reed, August 24th, 1958, Jung Letters, Volume 2. So
yeah, keep going.
And then Sputnik and the space race are the modern equivalent of the ancient sky gods' humanities need to believe in miracles when the world feels broken. Jung's letter to the unnamed journalist. These satellites are not just machines, they are our psyche's extension, reaching for meaning in the void. So, yeah.
And so this was like, thank God. When I found these, I was like, okay, like, because sometimes I think I'm really crazy by looking at all the different archetypes mixed into the space program. And I was like, would Jung approve of what I'm doing? Like, I don't want to, like serious young people, I think would hate my guts if they watched any of my stuff.
Oh, no.
But, you know what I'm saying? But some, yeah, I think we know that for certain. But, I think it's like pretty spelled out right here. He saw it as the divine, like as this celestial theater of our unconscious and the interplay of different symbolic forces. So I think he wouldn't have necessarily had a problem with the presupposition that I've made in this project.
Well,
so I was pretty relieved when I found these. Like, could you imagine if I came across these? Like, by the way, don't ever think that there's some sort of archetype attached to anything that's going on in outer space.
Well,
like I would have been.
And
like,
why are all the
no.
billionaires and trillion whatever like so obsessed with it, right? Like Howard Hughes and his satellites are very interesting if people look into that. Let alone
I didn't even know he had satellites.
Oh, he was the beginning of many of it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. So, yep.
Interesting.
This has been going on and on.
Oh yeah. We didn't start the fire, right? Yeah, Ostic.
Yeah, are there any reliable biographies about Howard Hughes?
Oh,
Like,
so
do you
many.
recommend some? Which one?
Yeah, there's oh my gosh. Let's see. The Missing Years is one. Howard Hughes and the Mormon Mafia is one. That one's my favorite, one of my favorites. And there's a bunch. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the top one, but I can send if you'd like. Yeah, there's a lot. A lot of people are fascinated with him because he's a little strange later in his life, but he's also an inventor. And I'm telling you, like, I mean, he's related to the Wright brothers. He ends up owning fleets of planes. He ends up in satellites. He ends up in all these things and shuts himself up later and is peeing in jars and won't cut his fingernails or hair. I mean, walks with Kleenexes boxes on his feet. He doesn't meet with people anymore. He only meets with certain people that are in his group. Some people never ever met him. So this pulled a lot of things together for me with the King rituals. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
All right. Next slide. Unless Jordan wants to say something, I'm sorry. You're good. All right. This was just fun. So I'm trying to figure out like what we're doing here. And I it was interesting. I engage in a lot of different dialogue with AI, and I'm trying to like, what is it that like, what is this epistemological methodology that I'm employing or whatever? And it spat back this title, hyper associative mythic mapping. And I was like, that's a mouthful, and that actually sounds really, really accurate. But something I'm trying to do is to distinguish it from just whatever we're calling synchromysticism, which I don't think has been like codified exactly, whatever that is. I mean, we have different, is it adjacent? Is it a subset? Is it, is this entirely new thing? I think the thing is, as I try to figure out how this approach perhaps is different from synchromysticism, and I'm not an authority on the long history of it, the long history, I guess if we trace it back to Downard, maybe it's longer, but I mean, you talk about maybe getting started like 2006 or something, but I think there is like this, my push is to like go away from conspiracy and kind of see things as driven by these external forces. And I think that's a big part, at least with Downard, like always wanting to pin things on secret societies. Whereas I kind of see even the secret societies, they themselves would be subject to the same forces that we are all subject to. Another thing too is like kind of a fixation with trying to get a larger philosophical paradigm to explain it all. I know some individuals perhaps will turn to numerology or Kabbalah or something like that, but I think there's like a larger intellectual scaffolding that needs to be done. And if Jung is prioritized in hyperassociative mythic mapping, then I think we have some clues to perhaps return to Plato, to return to Schopenhauer. But it was interesting as I was talking to the AI, I was like, well, who else would be like an intellectual associate in this? And James Hillman was one that came up, a kind of a disciple of Jung, but also William Blake and Giordano Bruno. So I just thought that was interesting. We made some shirts. We're shopping some shirts to see it. It's a cool name, but that's just a kind of a fun little thing that I would relate. So maybe we are doing hyper associative mythic mapping. I don't know if anybody has any other ideas about what makes it distinctive.
I mean, there's a term called parapolitical, things like that.
Oh yeah, I have heard. Yeah, I follow a couple of those accounts.
It's not
and
it's not this deep and this, scope. The scope is not that huge like we have here.
Well, the parapolitical stuff, they go so deep into the details, like the people in the like the people that you would never know anything about, like people just you're not going to find them in history books and things like that. Like a lot of middle managers in the forces behind the curtains, like humans still. But yeah, there of course there's occult stuff that's connected to it.
Are they still hypothesizing though that it's like totally man-made? I'm not super familiar with people in that space.
I assume the para has something to do with paranormal, but maybe that has to do with like a
No,
different understanding of that.
they think about it in terms of what they're trying to create a web of sorts, the kind of conspiracy web. Okay, this middle manager, he was here, and then he was here, and then he was employed there. They like Luke talked about, these middle managers as people that we will never notice, we will never know about their lives. These Pinkerton spies, things like that. And the what you can say, the accountants for slavery plantation, or
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. It's just, yeah, I'm more metaphysically driven than that, but I'm sure there is a spiritual dimension to it as well. Anyhow,
Yeah, and I think Hoffman and Downard are more open to that metaphysical layer.
I'm actually
yeah,
shocked
I
that
mean,
Puharik didn't come up in your
Ooh.
search.
I don't know
Oh,
who hard. I don't know who that
Puharik,
is.
Andrea Puharik was a big, yeah, he was, he was an asset. He was, a scientist. He was into, I mean, you know who Uri Geller is? Uri Geller?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, Uri Geller comes up in everything I look at. It's crazy.
So Andrea worked with him and found him specifically, and he was the one, that ran these, basically, the show, what's it called with the kids, Stranger Things. That was kind of a play off of what he was doing with kids, and these Faraday boxes and mind travel, and it's a whole thing with the 9. I think we talked about the 9. Did we? I don't know the last time, but yeah, integral piece to the puzzle. So I think you would like to read about his stuff.
I think I've probably that. Yeah, I'm sure he's come up. I've just I homed in on Yuri because he's in the mix of everything. He's like in UFO stuff and spoonbender stuff and intelligence stuff. I'm like, why is this spoonbender everywhere I go?
This guy too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They've kind of hit it a little bit because then he went off into psychedelics. And have you heard of the book, The Sacred Mushroom? He wrote that.
I think I have. I mean, I'm kind of familiar with it.
It's super interesting. Yeah, he's everywhere. And he was, intelligence. I mean, they found out later. So, yeah.
My shocked face.
Right. But interesting stuff he did with the kids. Not ethical, but interesting.
Interesting. All right. That was oh, okay. 273. Now we're getting to synchronicities. So this was just fun. So we had this whole thing about Tyrannus being connected to the Wicker Man and perhaps Burning Man, and then as soon as we finished the podcast, this storm disrupted Burning Man, and then as soon as we finished last week, they had a murder or I think they were had a homicide investigation or something like that going on, and I posted something about it. I said, what did I say here? Burning Man effigy equals Tyrannus Jupiter. And then I found out that the temporary city that they do at Burning Man is called Black Rock City. Did you guys know that?
No, I didn't know that one.
And so that's so I'm like, okay, the Burning Man is like connected to Jupiter, and then they have the Black Rock City, which is connected to Kronos or Saturn, and they even look at this. When they erect the temporary city, they kind of erect it in like a Saturnian sort of arch, and I was like, oh my God, like how's that? That's crazy. So it seems like there's this interplay of Saturnian and Jupiterian forces, and one could potentially argue that that the Saturnian is providing order and the Jupiterian is providing purification. And I was just like, wow. And all the time I've heard people talk about Burning Man, I've never heard about Black Rock City and this Saturnian arrangement.
If it was a dead lady,
crazy.
People wouldn't be going crazy, but here we are, right? It's a guy.
Is that right? I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Like the real Burning Man.
Right.
Haha.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and then we had if we can go to the next one. This is just a silly little synchronicity. We talked about Apollo, the mouse god. I'm going to talk about Apollo, the mouse god, some more today. And for some reason, the news cycle picked up again this whole thing about this guy getting arrested dressed up as the Chuck E. Cheese mascot again. And then it's like, that's not it. There was also this like violent crime that happened in a Chuck E. Cheese this past week. So you had these dual Chuck E. Cheese mascot stories going, where somebody like robbed and shot into a Chuck E. Cheese and a Plato's Closet, which we also talked about. The Platonic, Plato's Closet, Plato's Cave, the Platonic connections to Jung. And I was just like, what is going on here? Like, is this like Truman Show reverse publicity trying to get Chuck E. Cheese out there? Or is this like some sort of headline communication, which seems to be part of hyper-associative mythic mapping? So I just thought these are probably boring when we have so much to do. But I mean, what are the odds that we're talking about Paulo the Mouse God and we have two stories in between our time getting together about Chuck E. Cheese? Just come on.
And most of them are
so
gone
crazy.
under. So I don't know that it's publicity for the restaurants because a lot of them are gone. So,
was it, Heidi? You and I are roughly the same age. Chuck E. Cheese or Chuck E. Cheese's?
oh man, Chuck E. Cheese, I thought, but I don't know.
It's kind of a Mandela effect.
Yeah. I don't remember cheeses. Is it cheeses now?
Yeah, well, I think
No,
it's a whole thing. It's a whole branding issue / timeline shift.
I'm
It's
always
complicated.
Mandela'd. Like whenever it happens, I'm like, no, that's not right. Stupid fruit strike gum. That one too.
It means you have sight.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious. What's your biggest Mandela effect?
Oh, the biggest one.
The one that just
Man.
shook you to your core.
Okay, it's in the Bible. There was no angel of death in the Bible anymore. And it freaked me out. I was like, wait, no, God didn't kill all those kids. And now it's like God killed the kids and didn't send the angel of death on Passover. And I was like, no. There was a big spooky angel of death. Yeah. Like I remember this and now it's kind of gone. I don't know what's up with that. So that one weirded me out. And the Lion and the Lamb.
Yeah.
I related to that a lot because I happen to be a Leo. And so I was like, no, it was definitely the lion and now it's a wolf, which is a completely different contextual meaning. So
changes all the meaning.
Everything.
That one really rattled me too. I did a really deep dive into that. I went back to sermons from the 17th century, like Jonathan Edwards and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I guess they were talking about the lion and the wolf back then. I believe
no,
this is
they weren't.
Is this Isaiah 20? Or I forget. But it is quite strange when you have so many people associated. Perhaps it was like some sort of cultural a shorthand, but
weird.
It's very strange. Osik, do you want to weigh in any of these synchronicities? You're like, come on, get to the good material. I mean, I think you could appreciate these mouse mascots and
the mouse god.
I mean, the fact that it's like connected to Plato's Closet and the Platonic elements too, like it seems to be signaling that.
It's fun. I really like the thing about the Black Rock thing. It looked like a corona, the crown. That's another thing. People could talk about the rings of Saturn being crowns, things about.
Yeah.
And also, I think you missed the part that Jung died on 6/6.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are things.
6/6/61, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I already missed it by 1 year.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay. Next slide. Oh, I got to make some corrections. I messed up some stuff. And I hate myself when I mess up.
We are
things.
Humans. Yes.
Osik, last time I told you that that 2001 was referenced in Magical Mystery Tour. That cannot be possible because Magical Mystery Tour came out in 1967 and 2001 came out in 1968. What really happened there is that the Beatles lifted extra footage from Dr. Strangelove and colored it with a green template without asking Kubrick, right? And then it's a very interesting scene because they're on the bus. I don't know if you recall this. And he's like, if you look over here, you'll see, I don't know, a cornfield. But if you look over there, you'll see something otherworldly. I forget what he says, the mystery bus tour guide. And then it's the footage from Dr. Strangelove with the psychedelic tent. And then ironically, the Stargate sequence in Doctor Strangelove then has similar sort of landscape footage with that green tint. So I don't know if like Kubrick was like, well, you stole from me, so I'm going to steal from you, or like somehow the Magical Mystery Tour and Strangelove and 2001 are in conversation with one another and are supposed to be considered to be companion works or something like that. But it was Strangelove, not 2001. Just to make sure.
My favorite one.
I was aware of
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So
I didn't get it totally wrong. I got it half wrong.
Yeah, Kubrick is deeply connected
And
with
no
the
one would
Beatles.
call me on it. What's that?
Kubrick is deeply connected with the Beatles. You know, not just Kubrick, a
He
lot of
sure
people.
is.
Yeah.
He sure is.
I don't know how much other people know. So yeah.
I mean, Carl Jung is deeply connected to the Beatles. You know,
Crowley.
Like
Beetle.
yeah, the Beetle, right? The Beetle is how he proved that synchronicity was real to his most like rationalistic patient that he couldn't have the breakthrough with. So the whole Gold Beetle episode. All right. Next correction. I made another half error talking to you about Alan Dulles and Carl Jung and Wild Bill Donovan. I said to you that Alan Dulles was the head of the OSS when Jung was working as an analyst for the OSS. That is wrong. Bill Donovan was the head of the OSS, and Alan Dulles was, I believe, a bureau chief in Switzerland, which facilitated the connection to Carl Jung and really got it going. So I had my timeline a little bit off there. So sorry about that.
What is this for?
Bob is Cocaine Bob's a fun rabbit hole with the Mormons. Process Church, Mormons. It gets crazy.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard one thing about Mormons. I don't know anything about them. I think I've heard that they are the most sought after people for the intelligence agencies because they're so loyal
they
don't usually get compromised because they don't drink, they don't indulge in other things. So
yeah, they're just like the Templars. They don't gamble and they don't drink and they don't smoke and all these things. And that's why Howard Hughes employed a complete Mormon mafia that was his most intricate keepers of the king. And people say that they were just his nursemaids. That's not what was going on. They were on his board and ran his companies even after his death. So it's really interesting. But they do have a program at BYU, to your point, to specifically go and seek them out for that. And they're not, that's like out there. That's not like a big hidden thing anymore. Used to be maybe, but
there's a structure called the Church of the Latter-day Saints. Is it related to Mormonism?
Yeah,
I mean,
it looks like
similar. Yeah, it looks like the structure in 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think maybe I saw it somewhere. I thought, oh, maybe it looks like that. But then I thought, okay, why would he be talking about? I'm just putting it out there.
RLDS one. Is it the spiral one? The spiral one? Is that the one?
No, something circular, a huge circular, something like that. I'll look it up later.
Yeah. I think it's the Reformed, the Reformed LDS temple.
Put it in the chat if you've got it,
sure.
Osik, or you can send it later. Also, I think the conversation with Dulles and Donovan and whatnot proceeded from the conversation about Operation Paperclip, and which feeds into the next error that I have to correct. It wasn't really an error. It's just I didn't know. I couldn't really give you the full information. So we can go to the next one here. So people are very well acquainted with Operation Paperclip these days. And I think Osik asked me, like, how did they decide which scientists and intelligence assets went where? I was like, oh, I think we had first dibs. I was completely making it up. And I made some joke about there being like an asset draft or something like that, because I'm like so NFL pilled right now. But so really it was geographical is the short answer. It's a little bit more convoluted than that, but the Soviet version of Operation Paperclip was this one right here. Does anyone speak Russian? Operation Oso Avyakim. So it was the scientists that were in West Germany primarily got taken via Operation Paperclip into the United States, and those in East Germany primarily went with this companion operation, Osso Aviachem, to the USSR. There's really not a lot of information on this. I mean, I didn't drill down so hard, but this is what it is. And given how much interest there is in like cosmological issues and Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle stuff, you would think that there would be people would know. I've been awake for like almost 10 years now, and I don't have this committed to memory. This is crazy. There were some like back channel swapping and some defectors, and they would trade and things like that. There's like some interesting, but generally it was geographical that determined what scientists and what assets went somewhere. So I learned something. Pretty cool, huh?
I didn't know that. Yeah. I knew that they went,
yeah.
but I didn't know how it was decided at all.
Yeah.
Incidentally, no lists. No lists on that stuff. Tried to find all that out. That's locked up.
Well, the Operation Paperclip stuff is like so. It's like normies know about this stuff now. Like Annie Jacobson, like writes New York Times bestsellers about it, and it's like
I
no
think
problem.
she mentioned the Russian piece in her book.
I'm sure she does, but I'm just saying, like, and I'm not, and there just should be more on this. Why is there not more?
Where did the books go? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah. Okay. Which kind of goes in, we're going to see like there's a lot of we all know there's like all this coordination, like there's all this coordination between the different space programs, right? So it kind of like the back channel still existed. Yeah.
That's the parapolitical lens.
Yeah. Okay. What's next? I haven't even. Okay. So I'll go through real quickly. There's nothing really substantial that I want to add. I just want to put this on your radar or people who may be listening to our stuff. We have found this Jack and the Beanstalk narrative in the Apollo missions that just keeps kind of giving. And it's been a really fascinating thing because it's allowed us to go into the study of fairy tales with Bruno Bettelheim's The Uses of Enchantment, von Franz's work and lectures on fairy tales, and Jung himself, although I've not gone too deep on this. And I made the point last time when we were talking, it's not like I just chose Jack and the Beanstalk and tried to fit elements into it. And I think this is kind of important for developing a methodology for like what counts as evidence and what is probable and what is likely, because a lot of this is so much speculation. It's not like a freaking science experiment. I can't make it so perfect. But and I think I mentioned, it's Little Red Riding Hood in the Apollo missions, and we were kind of like, no, we don't really see it. And so I was like, this would be a great time to use AI. And Grok made some recommendations for what might be there. And I don't know, some of these I don't know so well. So just quickly, I wanted to put it on our radar. The Frog Prince by Grimm, The Golden Goose by Grimm, Aladdin in Arabian Nights. If we go to slide 279, The Firebird, Rapunzel, and I guess The Little Prince is a little bit more obvious. I don't know if any of these will work. I'm just, many hands make light work. I'm putting it out there. I have no inclination that any of these will hit like the Jack and the Beanstalk narrative that we've been talking about, but it's worth a try to use these machine tools to like perhaps find the pattern elsewhere. But one that if we go to the next slide, which is for sure there, and I don't know if it's fair to call it a fairy tale as much as it is a children's book, is Alice in Wonderland. And let me, and a lot of this really comes from the sheer amount of rabbits and bunnies that are associated with the Apollo missions. And I'm not sure everybody knows about this, but obviously when they moved about on the moon, they did this procedure called bunny hopping. And they even, look, I'm going to do bunny hop and all this stuff. And they even kind of look like white rabbits in their white suits. In addition to that, during Apollo 12, 4 centerfolds in a variety of different ways were taken to the moon, Playboy bunnies. So we have more bunnies, right? And they were in the capsules and on the cuffs of the astronauts as they were walking on the moon. This is a fantastic story. And I think each one of these, Playboy is a very alchemical magazine. Kubrick himself gave one of his best interviews in Playboy. Like I joke about this whole people used to say like, oh, I read Playboy for the articles. No, you should read Playboy for the articles, because that's like, I think there's like a lot of disclosure that goes on in that magazine, because no respectable person would be caught reading like, I guess like a soft porn magazine. So I think it's kind of one of the places where disclosure happens. So I think these issues and these playmates will probably yield some cryptographic clues, especially. And one that was most interesting to me was this centerfold from August of '67, Dee Dee Lind. And later on, I think the astronauts like got together and they like auctioned the centerfold that they took to the moon, and they had it written on it, map of a heavenly body. And that's going to be really, really important, because we've been also, as we've done this sort of exploration, we've been looking deeply into the symbolic and archetypal significance of the moon itself as like the great mother, or this like and looking at for associations with like fertility rituals, because it does seem like there is some sort of cosmic consciousness that was born as the result of the penetration of the lunar surface with a solar deity in Apollo. And you having all these like very procreative rabbits running around, I think feeds into that narrative. And then one of the last ones that I'll mention here is during Apollo 11, there was reference on the journey there. There was reference made to this Chinese folklore about a moon rabbit, and it's a whole story that involves this girl that was like banished to the moon, and there's a rabbit that's making an immortality elixir. So this is one of those fairy tales I think we have to dig deeper into. I haven't had the time to do it today, but this is the transcript from Apollo 11. Oh, and Houston says, among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning is one asking that you watch for a lovely girl with a big rabbit. An ancient legend says a beautiful Chinese girl called Chang'e has been living there for 4,000 years. It seems she was banished to the moon because she stole the pill of immortality from her husband. You might also look for her companion, a large Chinese rabbit, who is easy to spot since he always is standing on his hind feet in the shade of a cinnamon tree. The name of the rabbit is not reported. And then Michael Collins goes, okay, we'll keep a close eye out for the bunny girl. So, yeah, of course, that brings into all this rabbit talk, clearly brings in the follow the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. And I'm sure there's a million other things. We could do a whole episode about that. A text I when I first met Jordan, I was like, you got to get this book, this Penguin Book of Symbols. One of those incredible, I got it for like $7 at like a used bookstore. It's one of the best texts that I have. And I think there's a lot in there that could be pulled as far as like rabbits being psychopomps and intermediaries between worlds and trickster figures. So this is also bringing in the Jungian archetype of the trickster as well. But I didn't have time to go deeper into that. I just wanted to bring that to our attention today. So that's what I have to say about Alice in Wonderland potentially being connected to the moon missions.
Wow. And I don't know, the guy that wrote it, I mean, he encased it in glass whenever he would travel, just in case, so it would survive. Like, it gets really weird. It gets crazy. So,
yep.
Yeah.
It really does.
You could do a series, not an episode. On all of that.
We talked about Alice in Wonderland, and I guess that's what got me going, because we talked about Nabokov and Lolita, and this has led to a conversation about how Nabokov translated it into Russian. He had called Anya in Wonderland or Anya in the Underworld. I forget which, but he did a translation, and that's when he kind of, because he had to study it so closely, he developed disdain for Lewis Carroll, and this is the connection to Humbert Humbert from Lolita being connected to Lewis Carroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was interesting.
Osik, I figured you might find this the most interesting, given that you kind of inspired this from last conversation.
I mean, really like the thing about, bunnies being associated with fertility, and then this whole moon landing thing that you have talked about earlier episodes is supposed to be a union. This moon is supposed to be the female, and the rockets that are trying to reach them is they're trying to create a union, a oneness, a wholeness. And it's like it's in the line of all the fertility rituals that we have talked about in the previous episodes.
Yeah.
All the making the grass grow, and all those weird things. So I think it associating the bunny with the moon, and bunny being known for its fertility. Also in Doctor Strangelove, how does the film end? The film ends with them talking about fantasizing about, we'll have 10 women for every man. Very eugenicist, a very it's a strange thing to put into a movie, but maybe for practical purposes. But considering all the mythical details Kubrick touches upon, this particular thing about like talking about it, spelling it out loud, like this is for talking about fertility and everything. We will have 10 fertile females for every male, things about that. So I thought it,
Yeah.
apart from practical things that they're trying to create a bunker underground, it has to have some kind of significance of a ritual of some sort.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
I
And we've
think
talked about this, right? Being associated with deities and like with Artemis and Diana and even the moon itself, like how the moon is associated with with menstruation and the feminine cycle. But one point I do want to add here is to kind of, if I am going to be a good hyper associative mythic mapper, is to push back against a total conspiracy understanding of this. And I look at the moon and I see that rabbit. Like, I don't need this outline here. And I'm pretty sure the Chinese are not the only people to have this story about a mythic rabbit on the moon. And so, like, I'll just be driving along and I'd be like, it can't be a conspiracy. There has to be greater forces at work. It's almost as if God himself put that outline of a rabbit on the moon for us to find now, and for other reasons. You know what I'm saying? Like, why have something that can be so easily seen as a rabbit? Like, we talk about in our culture, the man in the moon and all this other stuff, has its own charge to it, its own role. Even as a small child, I remember like adults being like, "Can you see the man in the moon?" And I would like squint my eyes. I still can't see the man in the moon. Maybe you guys can. I can't. Maybe I don't get it. I don't know why people thought there was a man in the moon, but I've always been able to see this rabbit even before I knew other people could see the rabbit. I was like, I think I see a rabbit. I don't see a man on the moon. So it, God could have made the moon perfectly uniform like the sun. I guess there are sunspots and that's a whole conversation, but in general, the sun is like uniform. Like, why does the moon have markings on it? And I guess, you say the modern astronomical understanding of this is like craters or like things crashing into it. The problem with that is that they're only head-on craters. They're not at angles, so that explanation doesn't work, and it's never really been observed. So then they say it's like lava beds and volcanic activity, and that's its own problem. But I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting wrapped around the axle on this. Like, it's almost like the conspiracy stuff is a temptation away from the creator and what he's tried to his own breadcrumb trail that he's left for us.
I get the point about this being some sort of a universal symbol for the entire people of Earth. You know, Have you looked
Yeah.
into the thing about what kind of ear it was? Was it the ear of the rabbit? In Chinese, because
Ooh,
he is mentioning. I think
I
it's
know that
the
1968, Year of the Monkey, because Kubrick brings attention to that in Full Metal Jacket with the Tet Offensive.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, if he's built,
that's a great point to bring up.
it could be related. But I looked it up. It's 63 and then 75 and then 87. All those years, Kubrick released one movie, and then first he released
And
Doctor
coincidentally, he releases Full
Strange.
Metal Jacket in '87.
Yeah,
So that, yeah.
you know.
Heidi, what do you think? What do you think about me going on about God putting a rabbit on the moon?
Oh, sorry. I think I was muted. Well, you hate when I say this, but Joseph Smith said
I don't hate
6-foot
I don't hate
Quakers live
anything you
on the
said.
moon. Quakers.
Yeah, you did
Yeah,
say that.
yeah. I don't know. But what I bring that up for is this has been a continuum, right? This is like in everything. Like this is Chinese lore. This is old Mormon lore. This is Christian lore. Like I was a kid that they were like, oh, look, the man in the moon. And I was much like you. I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. But we do know it's very powerful. I do think when you look at occultic texts, they speak about different sun gods living in the sun and people living on the moon. And I think maybe that was the allegory that he was going with there, where they're always speaking double, triple speak, right? Like, this is ridiculous. But then the other people that get it, they're like, right. I mean, they know. So I think everything's a little nuanced like that. But for sure, I mean, I think that I know that the rabbit is a very magical being. Like, what do we learn as kids? Pull the rabbit out of the hat, and it's way deeper than any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't want to open a can of worms, so I'm gonna be brief there.
Oh God. Like, yeah,
You're
well, I'm opening
fine.
all kinds of ones. I just I have control of the slides.
Yeah, it just
This is
goes, you guys know it goes deep. Even he was just like,
Yeah.
yeah. I think he has something to say
One
there.
other thing that you pointed out about rabbits being some sort of conduits to another world. In the story of Alice in Wonderland, it's the rabbit that she chases after, and then she ends up in the Wonderland. So I really think there's some kind of connection that you chase a rabbit and then you.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
in
So you
The
have to think
Shining,
about that.
he wears a rabbit. He's Bugs Bunny. He's running around. Jack is chasing a
Mhm.
rabbit. You know.
That's super fascinating because, right, like Danny is called Doc, right, which is a gray white rabbit. And then he also puts the Apollo sweater on him later, kind of connecting. Yeah, see, see
The
it's happening.
rabbits, moon, and mirrors, man. It's all about
Yeah.
that. And going underground, definitely, or above to the
And
unknown.
I think, and so I think we'll need to look at what like Freud and von Franz and Jung whatnot had to say about this. But I think it's that the like you're saying, like this the rabbit being sort of an intermediary between worlds, right? Like clearly the cosmic aspirations are taking us from one world to another. So it's not so much like a tunnel that we're going through, but it certainly is we're descending through some darkness to come out to something else where everything is inverted. Okay.
And it definitely goes back to fertility too, just to mention that really fast.
For sure. Like the Playboy bunnies on the moon, like really drive it home. Like it's, and the fact, like, yeah, like the fact that they called the Playboy Playmate like a heavenly body, like that kind of to me just scream, it kind of screams it out that we're talking about like something sexual going on the moon. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jordan.
Oh, that's okay. I don't have all the answers on it, but it stood out to me that in the symbol book, most of these stories in English really use the word hare, not rabbit. rabbit is more a term like we all use, I think, in our day to day. But I think there's something there because when you look into the etymology of both of these words, it's not super clear. Some things you look up and it's like, oh, this came from this, from this, from this, and it's super straight. And all of the words have encoding in them, they carry frequencies in them. And I almost feel like this switch from hare to rabbit is meaningful in some way to keep us from really understanding the true depth or the true meaning of what the symbol is. If you look up hare, it's maybe related to harass, it's maybe related to frightening, it's maybe related to ravaging and plundering. It's a little fuzzy. So um,
I
I'll
had
probably
to look
spend some more time on it. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
had to look that up because you were talking, you said hair, and I was like, I think there is something with that. And there definitely is. It says the moon goddess Isis, such as the hair-headed goddess Wenanut, are associated together. So I just did a quick and dirty search there, but yeah, yep, specific to the moon. So female
Jordan, if you want to
counterpart.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there is a, I just now remembered that there's the expression. I put that in the chat. I don't know if you want to bring that up, but there's the whole mad as a March hare. I
Oh
even think that
yeah.
there might be a Kubrick movie where that's said, but that's a reference to the insane hare that's at the Mad Hatter's tea party.
Yeah. Yep. I
Mad as a
definitely
March
think
hare.
they're definitely tapping into, these other gods, I think. So yeah, it's most
And I
likely.
think in the dictionary, Hecate came up. I never know how to say that. I think that she came up in that, but I might be conflating the fox entry and the rabbit hare entry,
Yeah.
but they have
Yeah.
lots of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And Jordan, just to keep you on the mic, would you progress to the next one and read
Sure.
that quote that's in the middle there?
Yeah. The sea is the mother, the abysmal container where the ego drowns and the self is born. Symbols of transformation. The ocean
And
is the matrix of all things dark, female, devouring yet generative from archetypes and the collective unconscious. Yeah, this is
yes.
something in general, like it's very fascinating how like Lucifer and Venus kind of get collapsed and sometimes confused. Like that's such a fascinating little area of symbolism to me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was trying to point out here, and that is it's a whole separate issue. The reason why I wanted you to read those things about the connection between the mother and the ocean, or the feminine, the dark feminine and the ocean, is that I don't know how many people know this, but the Galileo and other astronomers named all these different features on the moon after oceans and seas. So we have to think about this, right? Like that the guy that pretty much like helped to I mean, it's a long complicated story about how we got onto like the heliocentric model of the universe, but like looked at the moon in the sky and said, "Oh, those dark spots, those are definitely seas and oceans." Meanwhile, the Galileo that we all hear about is this one that had this like penetrating insight into heliocentrism and all of that. And it's like, okay, like, are we not like I've looked at the moon and never once have I thought like there was like that one of these dark spots could be interpreted as a sea or an ocean. And the reason why I bring that up, not only to cement the connection, at least from a Jungian perspective, between the moon and water and these oceans and things like that, but pretty much all the Apollo missions landed on the edge of or the banks of these seas and oceans or in them themselves. Like, for instance, Apollo 11 landed in the Sea of Tranquility, which has its own sort of mythological meaning. We've looked at this before as I was like, it does do the Apollo missions seem to be acting out Revelation 12 and having these 12 astronauts as these 12 disciples who seem to be walking on water, right, as they go across these lunar features. But that's really what the point of this slide was. It's just another layer where we can associate outer space and the moon itself with either the anima or the collective unconscious, or the devouring mother and the great mother. So that's why I wanted to include this.
Well, we have the waters of the womb.
Yes.
Also, we know what the Bible says about water and space.
Yeah. And that might have been why someone like Galileo and other astronomers were inclined to see the features of the moon as water and seas and stuff like that. So even though they were like reconceptualizing the universe and breaking away from how it's described in the book of Genesis, right? They're like, well, we're not going to throw the baby out, pardon the pun here, with the bathwater. But of course, the sky and space and things like that is not this empty void, but it's still kind of how the Bible describes it, as being water. And that's going to get into other slides and stuff like that too, like the yearning itself for outer space. And Jung talks about this elsewhere, in like in regards to stellar transcendence, might be a return to the fetal state, so we actually can like reunite with the amniotic fluid of our mothers. Like, that's crazy. And this might explain like the whole, like, what, this whole thing, like JFK is like, we go to the moon because it's hard or something like that. No, it's because we want to reunite with mommy. You're muted, so they can't hear your laughter, but I can. But that's that might be what it boils down to. Ostic, you had something you wanted to say?
I really like this insight, and I think that you pointed out that it's supposed to be amniotic fluid. If you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, during the Stargate sequence, there's so many jelly-like substances. After it's supposed, on the cover story is they're supposed to be galaxies that are forming for you, in front of your eyes. But the way it is shot, it's actually shot in like in water, putting in simple droplets, and then they're creating. But I always associated it with some sort of a fluid. I could not actually. So I think that inside this space, supposedly an amniotic fluid, a place of birth that is giving life. A
Yeah.
mother gives life to us, and then space gives lives to these planets and stars and everything. And I also like this idea of the moon being something uh, ocean, something related to the void. It's something. It's a negative. It's something that can receive. It can something that can suck things in. And with the sun, I think it's supposed to give things out. So I think that's that dualism. That sun is giving out energy, and the moon is like taking it in.
Yeah,
Something.
that's the idea, right? The way that it's supposed to work according to modern astronomy, right, is that the moon is not emitting its own light, right? That it's taking in the solar light and reflecting it back. Of course, the problem is with that, if you measure the effects and the temperature of moonlight, it's actually different from the sun's light. But the whole, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? It's the moon's light is cold. It's, if you stand in the shadow of a tree in the evening, it's actually warmer than if you were in the moonlight. And that's the reverse of what happens with sunlight. So
I never noticed that. That's interesting.
yeah,
I have a funny
backwards.
thought. One of those videos where you can see like the water bubbles. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, do I know?
What if those are real? I don't think they are, but
Oh,
but could be.
They're actually up there swimming. Maybe. They train in a pool. So, Heidi, what do you think?
I kind of wonder sometimes if space is underwater. And, there's a lot of back and forth about this. I mean, I know this is woo woo, not the moon per se, but just the space stuff that they say. I don't know. That they say.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like,
I'm one of those people. I've committed cosmological sins. Okay. I have. Okay. Okay. Next slide. Heidi's like, are we going to talk about the Golden Bough today? Yeah.
No. Coordinating children. Keep going.
Okay. I did not necessarily make an error with this. This is we talked about Votan, and specifically how I mentioned how something about Jung's essay on Votan could be applied to Trump as we looked at him archetypally as a manifestation of Jupiter, as kind of avatar as Jupiter. One would be kind of entitled to think that there was a connection, right? Because there is a stormy aspect to Votan. But Jung says this in his essay. I found this. Also, he talks about it in the Red Book a little bit. Would you read this for us, Ostic? The quote that's on the screen.
Wotan is essentially a god of storm and frenzy, yet he is also the leader or master of the dead, the psychopomp exactly like Hermes Mercurius. Wotan Collected
Great.
Works, Volume 10.
Right. So this is kind of a clarification. This is going to help us a little bit as we go deeper into this. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that he connected him to Mercurius and Hermes. So how this will exactly wash out just is to be determined. I think it'd be relevant when we look at, like, the Mercury program, and I'm not saying that Trump doesn't have some Votan aspects, but it doesn't seem to perfectly match. It's just another layer of understanding here. So, okay. Then we got our first slide on the Golden Bough. We only had an hour and 16 minutes prepared. Whatever. You know what? This is all workshop. We get to where we need to get to. Okay. So I have a little pair. This is the emperor. This is the Mikado, the emperor that was enthroned in 2019, October 22nd, 2019. Emperor Naruhito, with God bless his soul, God rest his soul, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. I believe he died in an assassination attempt or something like that. So I'm just going to do a little reading here to contextualize what we're going to be talking about. So in early societies, kings or priests, seen as divine incarnations with supernatural control over nature, were held accountable for calamities like drought or famine, facing punishments like beatings or death for perceived negligence. Their mere presence was believed to radiate universal influence, where even minor movements could disrupt the natural order, requiring strict regulations to maintain cosmic balance. The Mikado, Japan's emperor, considered an incarnation of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and this made him the incarnate god governing the universe. His sacred status demanded rituals like being carried to avoid ground contact and having hair or nails cleaned during sleep. We've talked about this to some extent. While his throne immobility later transferred to the imperial crown ensured peace, as movement risked war or famine. Meals in new clay dishes, broken after use, and taboos against laymen touching his garments or solar lunar exposure protected his divinity. The imperial crown, likely symbolizing the imperial regalia, like the sacred jewel or mirror, was placed on the throne daily to act as a palladium or protective talisman, absorbing the Mikado's ritual duty of immobility to maintain cosmic harmony. This shift freed the emperor from constant stillness. So, I don't know anything about Shintoism. This was all like super fascinating to me. I guess Shintoism is a form of like nature worship, and there's all sorts of blessings and taboos that are associated with staving off good and bad spirits. And I think, Frazer spends a lot, the lion's share of this first section talking about the Mikado of Japan. I thought it was super interesting. They couldn't even move, looking a certain way. Like all of reality was dependent upon how he even comported himself. And thank God they allowed him to have these palladiums, these talismans, to kind of take this place, so he wasn't so burdened with all of it. But as we see, Jordan, and we don't have to go through all the other ones unless people want to talk about them. I've pretty much enumerated them. This is on slide 284, we've got it all over Africa. And you can take screenshots of this where, these sacred kings were not allowed to touch the ground. They were confined to certain huts. They couldn't have sex. They couldn't walk. As we talked about, 285, this extended to Ireland, where there's certain actions that were avoided. Egyptian kings, we've talked about the Flamen Dialis, the Jupiter priest, who was, not allowed to consume raw meat, and he had a mud-smeared bed. The holy milkmen of India, I don't know if Osik knows anything about that. You want to enlighten us to us? They couldn't cut their hair and nails. And it just kind of goes on and on. But I think the Mikado kind of perfectly illustrates what Frazer is talking about. So this is one of those chapters I thought was going to take a lot longer to cover. I could go into all the particulars. Maybe a good person would spend more time on that, but I kind of get it. Like, this figure is like the sustaining force of the universe, and if he coughs or looks weird, then it's all over for him, and you can kill him and do whatever you want to him.
Well, the Merovingians were the same. The Merovingians
tell us about
their
that.
hair. Yeah, well, it's the whole Samson and Delilah too. Like, they couldn't cut their hair, and this was like a big, huge thing, and the Merovingians didn't, and they say that they're, the actual. We get into Rex Deus. We'll just say it that way for the people that don't, because we'll get into a nightmare if we open this up. But basically, the bloodlines of Jesus himself, this is what they're claiming. And not only that, but we look at these other people that have fallen into this weird king archetype, much like Howard Hughes, who blocked everyone out, only had, if you read through this, I did listen to this whole chapter like on audiobook, and it was talking about how he only had a couple people that would communicate with him. For everybody else, exactly what Hughes did. A lot of the cuckoo, they just blame this always on mental illness when people look like they're doing this. Well, we don't know what story somebody told him that got in his head, and maybe,
Right.
Look, he's grandiose. Like, we can all definitely say that we know that and most people are that are like that level, right? Like, you're like your own world basically at that point. And so I do think I think, the people surrounding him very closely helped him think he was in that archetype, and then they kept him drugged. And, I just find that fascinating. I had no idea about this. I knew about the Merovingians, but I didn't know about the rest. And that, you basically have to steal their fingernails and their hair while they sleep. And he never slept. So no wonder he looked like he did, because he was, and they just say, he's a drug addict, blah, blah. I'm like, really? Well, do you know people that are drug addicts? Because they're usually pretty good at shooting up. And he had at least 4 huge hypodermic needles in him when he died. I'm sorry, you don't do that. And back then they were scary. Like, you figured it out. Like, you're good at it. Like, if I always joke as a nurse, they should, and I'm not kidding, cross-train the people that get clean into phlebotomy, because they're some of the best I've ever seen, like literal. And so I'm like, they don't break off the needle in their body back when the needles were like, wow, like this big as the pen. That's just not a thing. And so, I think, not only he is in this archetype, but we've seen other people kind of slip into this and just be blown off as schizo nuts, but maybe not.
That's an interesting point. That, that's something that's perhaps a criticism of Frazer. I don't know enough. Like, this is my, I've read the book and listened to it once in each way, and I'm going through it again now. But I don't have this like total knowledge of the field. It's interesting that we don't hear as much about drug use in Frazer, about these different cultural practices. And is it because it's not there, or was it not documented? Like, I mean, are we supposed to believe that everybody was like kind of clean and sober? It's that is an element that, it's like, that is an element that is not discussed a great deal. Like, I remember, a particular example would be, as time has gone on, I guess I've learned a little bit about the the Delphic Oracle. And I think even like 15 years ago, I started to hear things about, oh, well, they think that the Delphic Oracle was able to go into her trances and produce the prognostications that she did because she was like inhaling like the fumes, like cracks in the ground, like volcanic fumes or something like that. And that this like put her into these ecstatic states. And, we covered with you and on my channel as well, we looked at Jupiter's oracle at Dodona. There's no mention of any sort of hallucinogenic drugs or anything like that. Further, the
They were
the
sacred.
Apollonian,
Yeah, they were
right?
sacred back then. Yeah. So I don't know
Yeah,
that they would have, right?
yeah.
Like,
I don't know. It's just like weird that it doesn't really come up in Frazer. But even if I don't know. Like, let's say she was like sniffing like some sort of volcanic vent or something like that at Delphi. Like, the whole culture, like, apparently she got a lot of stuff right. If like all the senators and things like that are like consulting it beforehand, like she must have been able to hit the bullseye with some regularity if they kept trusting it. So, like, it's like, how could someone who's like inhaling like sulfur or something like get in touch with the future?
well, sex magic and retention,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then we get into, we'll just say the cup of Hermes type situation all the way around there. We'll just say it nicely, right? And not only that, but like also I think flowers are often representative. Like we're going to talk about that when we get into the Wizard of Oz dark side. Like where does she end up? She ends up in a poppy field. Like all these things that we look at, I think they're innuendos. Like the Catholics holding the incense as they come down the aisle. Well, that used to be, it wasn't just what it is now. So it was to set the mood. And so it was to relax people. It was, I think, to, a point. And then the tents where they would set the religious fires and they would be, but it was illegal to do it outside of this religious practice at that point. It was just for that specific thing. And so I think a lot of times when these people talk about other people, it happens all the time with me when I talk about religion, is they're like, oh, how dare she say that? That's sacred to them. I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm going to say my piece. But I think a lot of times these authors, especially back then, would have been more careful than that, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the mind's
it's hard to
thing.
say. Yeah. I think a lot of this is totally possible without it. I don't know. I can't verify in all of these individual instances, but where my head goes, Heidi, you talking about how organized institutions have like maintained sex magic in a way, but don't call it that and condemn any form of it outside of the institution.
Well, they mimic it in a different way too now. So
Right.
like, for example, when you get married in the Mormon church, you're not supposed to have previous, sexual, everybody pretty much knows they're pretty chaste people. And so you've got all this energy and you're leaning over an altar together and you're creating your marriage looking into mirrors, but there's some sacred union there too with your mind, because you've had all these weird initiations. You're probably in a strange headspace like I was. I know that. And then you're a little bit more open to a lot of this energy, especially where you're supposed to be chaste. I mean, most people, this is like a Mormon fact, most of them don't even make it to their wedding night. They like hit it on the way to their reception because they're so top max that they're like, pull over somewhere. And this is real. They're like, find a closet,
No.
Oh, it's real. And so think of that energy like, and then they're harnessing it, right? Like, and the sad part about that is not the people that are there. They are not harnessing it because they don't even know what it is. The other people that orchestrate these religious mysteries still, they are harnessing it because they know what it is. And so the priests, it goes back to we're going to say the priests in this area. We're not talking about a priest like in the Vatican, like a high priest, right? In the church is what they even call it. They do know some things, and I don't think all of them do. Like, this is not all like a nefarious thing, but some of it is. And they use it. They use it. And that's my whole problem with it. That's my whole problem with it, is you are not allowing the people that are creating the energy to use it. It's much like, everybody's a slave to the system in another way. It's just the same thing, it's just not money, it's energy. So, yeah.
That's super interesting. I
That's
think
why,
too, a
that's why
similar
I speak. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super important. I see a similar thing happening within like the intelligence agent. It's a different thing, and
Yes.
we're talking about drugs, so there a lot of it's drug induced, but the person it's being done to, and you
Yeah.
mentioned the kids with the stranger thing. There's so
Hmm.
much going on there.
It's a lot. Like, I mean, think about the high you get to when you think you have the most knowledge. Like, they say have the most knowledge, not only the true form of, the only true religion on the earth, but the truest form of masonry on the earth. So, I mean, I'm sure that ticks Masons off, but that's literally what they say. And so think of that high that you have when you're the best of the best of the best, sir, right? Like, and that's like something that elevates your level. You're always kind of like, like, and they do. And I was like that. You're a little bit anxious too. That anxiety is always there because you want to be the best of the best of the best. Like, we talked about that. Luke said that when he was like, I hate to be wrong, because, and they use that, aren't like, really, they harness that. And like, I think it's okay if it's you harnessing your own energy, but like when somebody else takes that from you, I don't care at what level, and all of the religions do it, all of them. It's just they all have their own way. And so, they can use fear. Like, think of Monsters Incorporated. Think of how silly of a show, but they told us so much in that dumb cartoon. Like, I mean, it went over my head because I wasn't in this back then, but I rewatched it and I was like, whoa, they're telling us everything. It's not just fear, it's laughter. It's, all the things that really feed this universe. We'll just put it that way, So, yeah, I think it can be used. I think it doesn't always have to be drugs is the point. So, and sexual energy is something. It's I mean, they wouldn't be practicing, they as in people in the world, not Mormons. I'll specify on this one. They as in the world, white tantra wouldn't exist for nothing. The Templars wouldn't have been involved in such things and have it be secret for nothing, but they were. And so are other secret societies. So, there's my weirdo's thought.
Ostic, what do you have to offer here?
I think talking about sexual repression, I think it's perfectly illustrated in the film called Full Metal Jacket, where he talks about marrying yourself to your weapon. It's explicitly being told that their sexual energy is being transferred towards killing and towards using their weapon. And he's trying. That's what she's talking about. I think a lot of cultural practices, the whole mindset is being transformed in a way that now they perceive all the sexual fantasies through that weapon, and that's what's happening there. So
And that's why they never want you to spill that cup, because they want that energy to stay. Oh, that's why the Nazis were so pissed. Their rail was intact.
It's a belief with a lot of people, especially men. I think, like if you've seen the film Raging Bull, it's pretty explicit that he considers like engaging in sexual acts as something that is draining to him, as something that he will pay for at some point. This something. I think it's kind of what she's talking about. And he's losing his energy and he's not able to perform as well in the boxing ring, and he tries to blame it on his wife for some reason. So
Because
that
that's what they
this is
say.
something some sort of some sort of transactional relationship is in the mind that if you'll do this, you'll lose some intensity in your life, you'll lose something vital. That's why I think it's kind of fetishized, this whole thing, in a way.
You,
It
you
it,
can
it
touch the
changes your mind.
apple,
It changes
right?
your.
You can touch the apple. You can lick the apple. You just can't eat the apple. You can't complete the situation because for men, right, they started noticing in this whole Gnostic situation that, women didn't happen to them, right? They don't just roll over and go to sleep. They're good to go. So then they're like, oh, she's stealing my essence. She's stealing my vril. This is like a big thing in the Nazis stuff. And then, that's a bad thing. So you can do all the things you want all day long, but you better not complete that action, is what they say. So,
Are you talking about the Vril Society?
yes, the vril.
Okay, okay.
Yes. Yep. It gets very weird. I watched some weird, I'm sorry that came up, but I watched some stuff on that the other day. And yeah, it's a
No,
whole
Top of
it's
thing.
mind.
it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I
All
And
right.
had
Well,
one
let's get to the.
one one
Oh,
point.
sure, sure.
I'll then you can go on. You mentioned the emperor. He was crowned. I think you guys remember what the situation of Japan was in 1945. What they had, their army was headed by a guy who was an actual emperor. He was called Emperor
Right.
Hirohito.
Hirohito.
And yeah, people actually believed him. There was People were actually thinking of him as a god, incarnate god.
Yeah.
There was no metaphor about him. So
No.
so after, when Japan surrendered, they all lost their mind. People started, killing themselves on the street. Okay, our god, he has surrendered. How can he surrender? How can our god, bow down to the Americans and everything? There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean
even
that. Yep.
after the Even after the war, people kept believing in it. And this emperor, he never got deposed. He was living on a pension. He was chilling. This guy, he must be his descendant, the one who's currently the emperor. So there's a
Yeah, I'm
movie
not
called.
exactly sure how it works. I think it's going from my notes. I think they did it by like you became. I don't know how the enthronement works, but at least at some point it seemed like it was passed on to children. So I don't even know like you knew the. I'm not fact check me on this. I'm probably gonna have to do some sort of correction next time. But it seems like it was it like you were raised as a child into this role. But maybe that's not what happens post World War II, because we're obviously looking at the enthronement of what's this guy's name, Norharito or something like that. Like that happened in 2019 when he was clearly a man.
Yeah, it happens. It happens in Buddhist culture as well. All the Dalai Lamas, they are kind of hereditary. There was a movie made called The Last Emperor. Then
Yes.
something, yeah. There's another movie that you should watch for fun. It's not related to this. It's called The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On. It's by Kazuo Hara. Is it? That is, yeah, Kazuo Hara. It's a documentary film. It's about a guy who was in Papua New Guinea or somewhere like that, and he was stuck there. And then he found out some of his friends, they got killed, and they were mysteriously killed. And then 20 years after the war, he's going around asking people like what happened, who killed them, how did they die, because there were no reports made. And then in anger, because he was continuously denied, then he went into a parade and shot at the emperor, but the emperor escaped. Things like that. That's a good documentary. You should watch it. It's
You
a good watch.
the movie list you have given me has been kind of insane.
The
All right,
Emperor's
let's
Naked
go into
Army
section.
marches on. Okay.
Yeah. I'll have time to watch movies one day. Well, I'm so close to solving the mysteries of the universe. I'll just catch up on your movie list. Okay. So really what proceeds in section 2, it's entitled what's it called? Divorce of the spiritual from the temporal power. The burdensome taboos of royalty or of royal or priestly roles in early societies often led men to refuse these positions, causing them to fade or accept them only to become passive, cloistered figures. As a result, the actual control of government slipped from these weakened spiritual leaders to stronger men who wielded power without the title. In some societies, this created a lasting split between spiritual and temporal powers. The original royal families kept their religious duties while a new vigorous group took over civil rule. And I've got this all documented in the next 5 slides. I think if Jordan can progress through those, can look, but I mean, I think generally we understand this and we've been dancing around it. Like, if you can't move or you sneeze or your toenails get too long or something like that, and like there's death or the throne is usurped or something like that, obviously this becomes something that is not a desirable role that anyone wants to perform. And we can see how the split sort of happens. It'd be interesting to think about this. Frazer is looking at other societies, and I encourage people to take screenshots of all the different things that are progressing here if they're curious about going deeper into it. But I mean, as I read that, the first thing that came to mind was obviously the split between the British monarchy and the supposed democracy that they have there, right? Like, is Frazer not giving? Is the mechanism for how the split happens? Is this an accurate portrayal of how we got these dual figures within these societies? Because that's not necessarily how it worked in Britannia, or is it? And I don't know. Ostic, you're in a very interesting part of the world. I'm not exactly. You mentioned that your president is seemingly just a figurehead and doesn't have real power. I think that's what you said. I don't want to get you in trouble, but who is the religious figure? Who is the center of the universe in India right now?
I can say there's too many religions. People are very tolerant of each other. I don't think
I mean,
there's a single religion.
it's primarily a Hindu state, right?
It's a Hindu state where people don't actually, revolve around a single god. It depends on the calendar, because these 5-6 days a week before this, we had like Ganesh. Ganesh was the god that people were dancing around. There were parades happening every night. So it depends on the season. There's not some monolithic god that we are surrounding around. It's basically a cultural event. I think this thing that you talked about, it's kind of related to the schism between the church and the state. Could it be? I'm not sure.
It seems relevant. Yeah.
I think these kind of things, because you need there's a line of traditions, because you're living in a world and there's traditions going on, and suddenly those traditions stop working, and then there are new people, they come in charge and they solve those problems. And once they start getting these powers, they start consolidating another layer of power around them. And then we have these two competing powers. Suddenly there are two groups. One is a traditional group that is supposedly the body politic of the culture itself, and then there's another group who's actually doing the work, like managing stuff. So that's the conflict.
No different than the Queen of England, right? She's the old, like, she doesn't really do the things. She's just kind of there, but she's not doing the laws, like you said, right? It's like the carryover, I guess, is the best way to put it. The icon. But look at how much energy she drums up. Psh, that family.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. Like, which one's actually the real one?
Exactly. Well,
We're told it's Parliament. We're told
Mhm.
it's the House of Lords. And same in the US. We're given government, we're given politics as
Yeah.
our figurehead, but where
Who's
are the
really
decisions?
pulling the strings? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
we
know
have
But
an
that is the
icon.
focal point.
Yeah, we got
We
an
have an
icon.
icon. We have a focal point to project onto, to get emotional in positive and negative ways, but very strong emotions.
Yeah, they'll shoot your ear off for that. I shot my ear off. No. Bad joke. Bad joke. But seriously, like, honestly, look at how much, energy this is drummed up. Like, and the queen, look at every time one of them gets married, I should say the king now. So it's a lot. I mean, he unveiled a picture and look at how viral that went. Like, okay, creepy picture, but whatever. It's just all energy. in a way. So I think it's the same for what you're saying. It's like, they're giving the people what they want. It's kind of like Christmas. It's like the Saturnalia versus Christmas. Like, yeah, you can have your Christmas tree and we're going to go do our weird shit over here. Like, that's what it is, Yeah. Who's doing weird what, where, how? We don't know. We don't get to be privy. But yeah, I think that's a fair point.
All right. We satisfied with this?
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty straightforward. So we've already kind of tap dance around this a little bit. I think I've anticipated this. I'll just go ahead and read this quote from Young's The Red Book. So now I'm going to now I'm transitioning back to the other rabbit trails I'd like to follow. Heidi, these images are from my attempt to depict Young's out-of-body experience that he had when he was in 1944 after his heart attack, and also the synchronicity between Carl Jung and John Young, the one of the astronauts. But this quote from the Red Book I thought was interesting, and we've already sort of alluded to it. Your soul wants to leave you to attain the stellar freedom of the Great Mother. She wants to unite with the eternal, with the cosmic womb from which all things emerge and to which all things return. And what I thought was so interesting about this, aside from we're getting another quote from Jung about it's there this yearning for potentially the Great Mother in outer space, if that's what's implied here, is that if you read up on the biographies of all the different astronauts that participated in the Apollo missions, many of them had profound religious experiences that spoke of sort of fusing with being or the totality of existence, etc. Several of them became Christians, right? I've even got this in the next couple slides, Jordan, if you want to progress to that. But it is very interesting that this seems to be fulfilling what Jung is saying about stellar transcendence when so many different astronauts themselves experienced something like stellar transcendence when they went on these moon missions. And this raises a very difficult question, right? Like, I try not to weigh into whether or not the mission was real or not, because that triggers so many different people. I want to kind of keep it on the archetypal. But an argument that you could potentially use for its reality is you're saying, well, all these different men had these religious experiences going to the moon. You think they're just making this up? And I don't necessarily think that happened. I think they kind of believe they experienced something. But at the same time, it raises a very interesting question if these experiences could be induced in some way. If you were going through a hyper realistic simulation, if you were given drugs, that somehow you could feel what these men felt as well. And I don't know, it especially raises a big problem for people who are Christian, who look at several of these astronauts who like started ministries and things like that after they went to the moon. It's like, that's a big reason why like a lot of evangelicals got behind the moon missions, is they had these guys come back from space and they're like, it proves that Jesus is real. And they're like, well, we're going to make this part of our identity now. We got astronauts saying that the Bible and Jesus is real because they experienced something cosmic in outer space. So it presents kind of a dilemma for those of us who want to just reduce things one way or the other. It is a very interesting wrinkle in analyzing this historical event.
I think the starting churches is really interesting after the fact, for sure. Knowing what we know about Puharich and the, telepathy tapes, that's a whole rabbit hole. So,
but yeah, and the thing is, what makes it even more complicated, they don't all start the same type of church, like some of them start like psychical research facilities and things like that have nothing to do with Christianity. So it's not like all of them that came back and became radical Christians. A couple did, but then others, like started practicing like new age psychical sciences. Like Edgar Mitchell is one of the most interesting
Mm-hmm.
characters from this whole thing. So it's not even it's not I even if you're going to say these religious experiences were real, they don't slam dunk prove one religion over another, just that there was something transcendent involved in the mission.
Well, like Devo's album, I think is titled Something for Everybody.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
For sure. For sure.
It's
So it
much
may
like
not be as good a
it's like the Nine. They all started weird things after, like, I mean, Bell helicopter. We've got the inventor of a helicopter, very serious person, and after that seance of the Nine, he was like, "Nah, I'm just gonna write woo woo books now and be a new age guy and like do all this stuff." Like it completely changed all of their courses, like what you're saying, and it didn't necessarily have to do with just Christianity, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, kind of where we've taken things within this context, like, I don't know how much we want to get into it, but it's almost like we're putting it in different packages for different
Mhm.
audiences so that we can insert whatever cultural programming.
Ooh.
That's really
That's
what I
true.
meant, was like
Mhm.
there's a flavor
Oh,
for
yeah.
everybody.
Well, that is, yeah, because it was this world unifying event, right? So, like, why not have kind of a nebulous, broad religious experience that could appeal to all the different religions of the world and say, yeah, basically, elements of your religion are justified by this whole sojourn. That's deeper. I like that.
But it brings in the symbolic program that they want into all of these different factions in the
Right.
packaging and the wrapper that they're going to be most in, inclined to engage with.
I
Because
think that's a really valuable insight. Yeah.
if it was just in the Christianity wrapper, they wouldn't be able to reach so many people. Also,
And
if it
probably
was
more people, yeah, probably more people will be skeptical of it. Like you'd have like whole like East Asian religions would be like, yeah, no, or Muslim religions would be like, yeah, that wasn't real because it doesn't affirm what we understand religion to be.
Much like the whole Project Bluebeam narrative, right? Like there'll be
Yeah,
something for everybody, like she said. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's great, Jordan. I love that.
I mean,
What do you think,
could also,
Ostic? You're not in the West. How does it make you feel?
I mean, it could be that those people experience these feelings and they express them in the way that they knew how, and in their understanding, the way they were brought up, they could express this and they felt this way through churches. So maybe that is why they went through that route. And through that, I mean, because of, you cannot be like alone and then be, have a feeling of oneness. You cannot have that. You have to have a lot of people around you who are affirming that belief, and you have to affirm that worldview around. And churches are a good place to, congregate and to have this worldview affirmed, and actually build relationships with people. I'm trying to be, give them a benefit or a doubt, like if they
Yeah,
felt something and then they translated it through action, because these astronauts, I mean, the way they trained so hard, all their time is spent studying and everything. They don't have time for religions and everything. So I don't think they have time, because if you have to study such thick books, how would you like take out time to actually deeply feel things? You have to feel this within you to actually become so dedicated that you're going to start a church. you know that feeling, a lot of men don't. I didn't feel that until I was 21. I don't feel any emotion until I was 21 years old. And then I thought, okay, because then I had some time to think about things. Oh wow, my emotions are real. So maybe it's a men thing. Women talk about this on the internet, that boys, they talk about things that girls discovered that when they were 12 or 13, and that kind of thing.
interesting. No feelings till you're 21, huh?
I mean, I didn't have any memory. I didn't really think about what I thought. I just did things. You're not gonna like classify me as a robot or something or a plant. I'm not that.
It is very
I know you
unusual.
guys because oh wow, this guy is infiltrating our show. That's not it.
Mm.
I just didn't have any time. I played sports. I just hung out with friends. I just reacted to the world. I did not introspect. Oh, what it's going to be, how I feel. I just you're gonna study. You're gonna study. 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Study all the time.
Gotcha.
I think
How are
you're
we doing on time?
programmed. I think you're programmed. Like, I think to his point, you're not thinking through things because you're like a soldier and you're not, some of us individuate earlier and we're like, nah, that doesn't seem like good for me. But some people are like really ingrained. It depends on your family, like how much you've been given opportunities to like do your own thing. Like my 11-year-old, that's who I keep texting. She's her very own person all the time, and we try to let that be within reasonable limits, but nobody had to tell her. She's just thinking her own thoughts already. But my son was more obedient and more like studious and all those things for a long time, so yeah, I could see that.
Well, as we've seen, every soul seems to have a different destiny with these archetypes. Okay, Heidi, I want to be respectful of your time. Do you need to go
Yeah.
do things?
Nah, we're good for another 15 or so, even 20, as long as she's good and
Yeah.
doesn't burn my house down. We're good.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the mission here. So let's give it another 15 or 20 minutes. Jordan, is that okay with you? Asik, I went back and I reviewed our podcast from last time, and I thought you had one of the more insightful insights from the previous podcast where you were talking about how, because we were talking about this Jack and the Beanstalk narrative and its emergent quality and how you saw it. I raised this question about whether or not the archetypal narrative had possessed Kubrick, without him even knowing it. And you seem to like that idea, and you responded to it, and you're like, I actually kind of see it in The Shining. I had picked out Jack with the axe. That seems to make sense as being this stand-in from Jack from the fairy tale. But it just kind of is, and we looked at how the collective unconscious can pretty much use whatever images and symbols that it wants to kind of communicate the themes and achieve its ends psychically that it wants to achieve. And I really thought more about that and thought about deeper, like as far as like there are reasons to think about Wendy being connected to the moon and being this great mother, as we talked about with the placement of the red book and the crossfade scenes. But also, you can start to think about Jack, and Jordan pointed this out during one of our sessions, not only being like the character from the fairy tale Jack and the Beanstalk, but also potentially a reference to to the Grim Reaper, the way that particular axe with its eagle beak, which is relevant, kind of looks like a sickle. And then we start getting into conversations about Saturn. And I'm not saying the map is completely perfect here, but you can kind of see that there is a narrative about that that world tree that is going to heaven, that is being intentionally chopped down, which I think is the point you were trying to make, that Kubrick might be alluding to in The Shining. And I just wanted to perhaps give that idea a little bit more attention and bring some imagery to it. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's kind of a work in progress, but I just wanted to shine a little bit more light on that insight that you had. Had you thought more about it since we talked?
That was the end of it. I thought about severing a connection from the mother. That is the thing that I thought. You're permanently severing your connection with the mother, and then you're entering a sacred place, and you're filling it with violence, and then the bathrooms just connected to subconscious. Bathrooms are where dreams happen in Kubrick movies. So she's stucking into the bathroom, and he's trying to break into a dream, and that's what it is. A lot of things about it's basically also about the geography of the scene, the way it's shot. You think that this axe is actually like breaking through the screen, the way he has shot it. So it's very interesting. there's
That
there's
is
a film
interesting.
screen, and then there's act that's coming out of this screen. Suddenly, you're trying to break something in. You know, that's
I
very
like
literal
that.
interpretation. Yeah.
Well, what do you think it means? I mean,
I
it's
think he's trying to, make it a more immersive experience, make it because I, th- yeah, I don't know. I mean, you talked about the doors of perception and everything. It's something he is trying to, he's hammering it home. This is my myth. This is my mythos. Because in the previous movies, he held back. He had a lot of restraint. He didn't do a lot of hammy performances. In Strangelove, he did because the context was there for him to like bring all these hammy performances. But in Kubrick, he completely transforms that movie from a very simple seeming story, straightforward story, to suddenly this Jack is acting super crazy, and then he is kind of in The Shining. He's exploring. He's showing all his cards. This is what I'm all about. Look at me. Look at all the things that I've put in here. He also talked about in interviews with Full Metal Jacket. He said, "My intention with Full Metal Jacket was to explore the story structure. People talk about it is, is in terms of there are only two halves, but it's actually very interconnected movie. Yeah, you've seen that graphic diagram of Bible being interconnected with lots of interconnections. You've seen
yes,
that,
yes.
right? Yeah. So if you think of Full Metal Jacket as something like that, then you can begin to think about what he meant by exploring the structure. You know, so when Full Metal Jacket, I see one shot is firing from one part of the movie and it's hitting some other part of the movie, and it's perfectly in sync. If you layer the screens on one another, you'll see that, oh my god, it's actually, So there's things going on. He is very methodical and very dense in a way, the way he narrates
Yeah.
narrative. So yeah, that's what I have to
Well,
say really.
yeah, and what I would say here is like I don't even know if Kubrick intended to communicate this or if this is me projecting onto it, and does it potentially foreshadow, because um Jack was unable to kill Wendy, spoiler alert. Um I wonder if that goes against this idea. We've made these prognostications based on the symbolism about whether or not the Artemis program will ever land on the moon, right? Because we talked about it from the passivity of the female deity or archetype being out of character, and the Jack and the Beanstalk narrative that we picked up on in the Apollo missions implies the chopping down of that tree, and there's no way going back. But maybe it hasn't been completely severed. Maybe not. Okay.
I,
Next
uh,
slide. Yeah, what were we gonna say?
I was saying that I think we discussed, brought it up last time that it's supposed to be a once in a generation thing. Once every generation, they're gonna like create this whole narrative about a fertility ritual that's they're gonna send 12 people to the moon. And then after, a period of 60, 70, 80 years, they're gonna start doing it all over again. So I thought it supposedly alluded to
That
that.
is a fascinating idea because um, there are we've looked at the run up to this event that happened in our history, like it was talked about in all this different science fiction, right? Like Jules Verne and things of that nature. But there were there were attempts to portray moon landings to people in like the 19th century, and this is the oh I there's like a Poe story, or there's this story about this goes into like what Heidi has to say about like Quakers on the moon. Like there was this story about people thinking that there were bats on the moon and Batman, and like they took this, and I believe Poe in a backwards way kind of participated in like one of these hoax stories about a moon landing situation. So maybe it has all these archetypal elements as well. And like what you're saying, Austin, if we could combine it and say, so it's not just like this like predictive programming run up to the event that happened in 1969 and further, but that these are actually like cycles of the same story being told over and over again, perhaps for reasons like you're saying, or like what we identified as somehow connected to fertility. Fertility of what type of consciousness? It seems like, but yeah,
Well,
There's
look at
another
it's
the
worth
thing.
thinking.
Look at the energetic pull of the moon. Even
Right.
the tides have to obey the moon. Females have babies more on a full moon. Like all these
Right.
things, So yeah, it's obviously powerful
Yeah, for
and
sure. For
considered
sure.
feminine. The
Yeah.
feminine.
Yeah.
It's a
The
powerful
whole
idea
tide.
to align oneself with. It's like it's already happening. Let me like align my whole life around this so that we can coincide together and then we can say that we are all together. I'm part of this whole meta narrative that's happening in the background
Well, that's why
on
they
its own.
changed the calendars so we couldn't do that. Right?
They work in a very different way. One more. I don't want to waste more time. One more point. If, if you've noticed, Argentina, it won the FIFA World Cup in 2022. I watched the match, and the last time they won it, it was in 1986, I think. So if you'll calculate the number of days it took, it was 33 years, 33 months, 33
Mm,
weeks, and 33 days, exact days. That was a time limit between them winning the World Cup, you know. So
mm,
I thought like who would think of this stuff because you cannot actually, it's not an anniversary, it's not something, you have to actually calculate it and then set a date. And there was the Pope's birthday was also there on that day, that when they won the World Cup, things like that. So that was
mm.
actually alluding me to the fact that they're following some other calendar. They're actually planning these things in these numbers and encoding them, and then they're holding these events in that particular days. Does it make sense? They're following a parallel calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I still, yeah, I
I mean,
still
you
kind
you
of
think
think
it's
like,
God doing that?
I think it's God.
It
Like, I
could be.
think, I've told Jordan about this. Like, I think about it. I'll give you some examples involving sports because I'm a big football fan, as I've made known here already. American football. So something I pay attention to a lot are the names of the players. Okay, like last night I watched the Florida Gators play, and they have their field goal kicker. Their kicker is named, his last name is Smack, right? Like, and this happens all the time where football players like have a name that kind of designates the position that they end up playing. Like there when I was at Georgia, there were all these like there was a running back named Swift, and he's actually quite good in the NFL as well. But the one that really caught my attention, all of this, is Andrew Luck, the phenom football player that got drafted in 2012. Well, why is Andrew Luck so interesting? Well, Luck is kind of an interesting name. Well, what team does he get drafted to? The Indianapolis Colts. And what is the Indianapolis Colts logo? A horseshoe. So when you look at Andrew Luck's jersey and helmet, the back of his jersey says Luck, but he's got a freaking horseshoe on his helmet. He's a lucky horseshoe. Did some secret society or pope or something plan that? No, no, that has to be from eternity. That has to be from some force outside of time. And it's not like a one-off thing. Watch any football game and it happens
Joe
over and
Theismann.
yeah.
It's
Joe
over and
Theismann,
over and over.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great example. I'm a Redskins fan or Commanders fan, whatever we are. Joe Theismann was like, when I was a little boy, was like our star quarterback. And what is he most known for? He had his thigh shattered on Monday Night Football in like 85, like, or something like that. And it inspired that whole movie, The Blind Side. So the man named Theismann got his thigh broken. He's the thigh man. And it's just over and over and over again. And I'm sure it's in your culture and soccer and all these other sports as well. I'm just giving, I could drop this whole Apollo thing and just concentrate on men who play sports and their last names. And I'd be doing the same sort of analysis.
I tend to I'm with you. And I love the passion. I typically see it as it's a blended situation. We have the underlying coding of the realm playing out. We have people who are in the know a little bit about the coding, or people making up their own coding and layering that on top. Next week, Heidi, September 11th is Ethiopian New Year, next Thursday.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's a mixture. But yeah, sometimes you get to these like statistically just so great. Like also, you're talking about you have to count like all these days and blah 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 blah. Like even reading news articles about like historical events or things like that. It's like, A, how do you even know this? Most of anthropology is just like, oh, really? Did you go back and talk to these people so you know that like 66,000, whatever, I can't think of a great example, but there's many.
I think it's both. I think it's purposeful changing of the way we should be with the moon cycles, and I think it affects people. And then I think there's actual intervention, from God, obviously. I mean, for me, but I'm like a both person because they try so hard to obfuscate it. Like, the whole Easter thing. Why was it changed? Why can it never happen on Passover? Because the Pope made that happen. So that energy would only go to one deity at a time and it wouldn't be split. So they manipulate. I guess they don't plan, but I think they manipulate. Does that mean that affects the guy that was like on the Super Bowl? I don't think so. Like on that level, like, I don't think it's happening there, but with calendars and systems and that kind of stuff for sure. I think they're messing with things just to make things not align, probably not knowing what would happen on that day or not knowing if this would be significant in your life, but making sure that you have the least amount of possibility to have anything great come of it, and then you have to manipulate your own stuff by prayer and intercession. And that's why it works, that's what I think.
All right. So I'm looking at the slides. By the way, all fantastic insights. I'm just trying to manage things. I'm looking at the slides I have remaining. This would probably be a good breaking point.
Okay.
And because the other thing is just a whole other thread that takes us out. So why don't we bring it to a close here? And we can just pick it up next week. Although I'm going to find like all these other slides too. So, but anyway, Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. You're welcome back anytime. I thoroughly enjoy collaborating and working with you.
Thank you.
And you just have a standing offer, but if you want to come and go, that's totally fine with me. And I've really appreciated all the unique insights that you brought today. And as always, Ostic, you're the man. And Jordan, you did such a great job today.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right.